Welcome to our deep dive today.
Okay.
We're going to be exploring 2 Chronicles, chapters 8 through 12,
Sounds good.
looking at the reigns of King Solomon and Rehoboam,
Interesting.
and seeing what kind of insights we can glean from their leadership and choices.
Yeah, it's a fascinating period in biblical history
Yeah,
because it really highlights that stark contrast
right.
between a wise ruler like Solomon at the peak of his power and then his son, Rehoboam,
Yeah.
who kind of stumbles right out of the gate.
That's what I find so intriguing about these chapters.
Huh?
You'd think inheriting a thriving kingdom from such a legendary figure would be a recipe for success.
Right.
But Rehoboam manages to make some critical errors
He does.
that ultimately fracture the kingdom.
Yes.
So what happened? Where did Rehoboam go wrong?
Well, I think to understand that, we have to kind of set the stage with Solomon.
Okay.
Chapter 8 really paints a picture of a kingdom at its zenith. Solomon has spent 20 years consolidating his power, building cities, strengthening defenses, establishing trade routes.
Right.
He even builds a temple for God,
Yes.
which becomes the central point of worship for the Israelites.
And it's not just about, brute force or amassing wealth.
No.
I mean, we see Solomon's wisdom reflected in, his attention to detail.
Yes.
For instance, he builds a separate palace
Right.
for Pharaoh's daughter
Hmm.
because he recognizes that David's palace, where the Ark of the Covenant was kept, was considered holy.
Yes.
This shows a deep understanding of religious tradition
Absolutely.
and a respect for God's covenant with David.
It shows a real sensitivity to the sacred.
Yeah.
And, I think Solomon's actions demonstrate this delicate balance
Okay.
between pragmatism and piety.
Hmm.
He understands the importance of political alliances,
Right.
but he also knows that true stability comes from honoring God and upholding the sacred traditions of his people.
It reminds me of the saying, with great power comes great responsibility.
Yes.
Solomon seems to embody that principle.
He does.
He wields his authority carefully,
Yeah.
always mindful of the spiritual implications of his decisions.
Right.
And speaking of people being impressed by Solomon, we can't forget the iconic visit of the Queen of Sheba.
Ah, yes. The Queen of Sheba.
Right.
That visit is really a testament to Solomon's far-reaching reputation.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, imagine.
Yeah.
This powerful queen travels a vast distance,
Yes.
likely across, harsh desert, treacherous terrain,
Right.
just to witness Solomon's wisdom and the prosperity of his kingdom firsthand.
Yeah.
It speaks volumes about the allure of Solomon's leadership.
And it wasn't like a casual drop-in.
Oh, no.
You know,
This is not a casual visit.
She comes prepared
Yeah.
to test Solomon's intellect,
Yeah.
bringing him riddles.
Riddles and challenging questions.
And challenging questions,
Yeah.
showering him with extravagant gifts.
It was like the ultimate job interview, wasn't it?
Right.
Assessing not just his knowledge, but also his character
Exactly.
and the well-being of his kingdom.
And Solomon, of course, rises to the occasion,
He does.
answering all her questions with ease,
With ease.
showcasing the flourishing society he has built.
Right.
The Queen of Sheba is said to be left breathless,
Breathless.
not just by the opulence,
Yes.
but by the order, the justice, the happiness of Solomon's people.
It wasn't just a kingdom of wealth.
Right.
It was a kingdom built on wisdom.
It makes you wonder, what would it take for people to be that impressed
Yeah.
by our lives,
Yeah.
by the way we conduct ourselves and handle our affairs?
Right.
Are we making decisions
Right.
that would leave a lasting legacy
Yes.
of wisdom and well-being?
It's a powerful question to consider.
Yeah.
What kind of impact are we having on the world around us?
Right.
Are we building something that will truly stand the test of time?
Now, this is where we see a dramatic shift in the narrative.
Oh, okay.
Solomon dies, and his son Rehoboam ascends to the throne.
Mm-hmm.
He's got some big shoes to fill,
He does.
inheriting a kingdom that is both powerful and prosperous.
Right.
But as we'll see, the transition of power doesn't go as smoothly as one might expect.
No, it doesn't.
Right from the start, Rehoboam faces a crucial test of his leadership.
Okay.
The people, led by a man named Jeroboam,
Yes.
approach him with a request.
Right.
They're burdened by the heavy taxes
Mm.
and forced labor
Yeah.
that were levied during Solomon's ambitious building projects.
Right.
And they ask Rehoboam to lighten their load,
Yeah.
hoping for a more compassionate approach from the new king.
So this is his first major decision as king.
Yeah.
It's a defining moment.
Okay.
How he responds to this request
Mm.
will set the tone for his entire reign.
All right. So what does he do?
Okay.
Does he take a page from his father's book and seek wise counsel?
Well, he does seek counsel,
Okay.
which, is commendable,
Right.
but the way he goes about it
Okay.
reveals a critical flaw in his judgment.
All right.
He consults two groups.
Okay.
The older, experienced advisors who served his father and his younger, less experienced peers
Okay.
who grew up with him in the palace. So it's almost a classic case of getting advice from different generations.
Right, with contrasting perspectives.
Yes.
That's a fascinating dynamic.
Yes.
Almost as if he's got two opposing voices whispering in his ears,
Right.
each pulling him in a different direction.
Yeah.
So what advice did the elders offer?
Okay.
Surely they must have seen a thing or two during their time serving Solomon.
They had. The elders, steeped in, the wisdom of experience,
Right.
advise Rehoboam to heed the people's request. They suggest easing the burdens, showing compassion,
Okay.
demonstrating that he is a king who cares for the well-being of his subjects. And they argue that this approach will secure the loyalty of the people and solidify his reign.
Makes sense to me.
Yeah,
Meet the people's needs, show them you care, and they'll be more likely to support you.
exactly.
But what about the younger advisors?
Okay.
Rehoboam's buddies, what kind of brilliant strategy do they come up with?
Well, their advice reflects a more, shall we say, assertive approach.
Oh.
They tell Rehoboam to show strength by being even tougher than his father.
Oh boy.
They encourage him to flex his authority, to demonstrate that he's not someone who can be pushed around.
Okay.
My little finger, they say, is thicker than my father's waist.
Right?
If you thought Solomon was demanding,
Yeah.
you haven't seen anything yet.
Oh boy. That sounds like a recipe for disaster.
It does, doesn't it?
It's like they're encouraging him to double down on the very policies that are causing discontent among the people.
Yes.
Almost as if they're more concerned with projecting an image of power than understanding the true needs of the kingdom.
Yeah. And tragically, Rehoboam decides to follow the advice of his younger companions.
Wow.
He ignores the wisdom of the elders, perhaps blinded by pride,
Okay.
and a desire to assert his authority.
Yeah.
He tells the people that he will not lighten their burdens, but will make them even heavier.
It's a decision that will have far-reaching consequences, ultimately fracturing the kingdom that his father had worked so hard to build.
Yeah.
And this is where we really see the contrast between Solomon's wisdom and Rehoboam's lack thereof.
It really is.
It's a stark reminder that leadership is not just about inheriting a position of power.
That's right.
It's about making wise choices that benefit those you are called to lead.
Absolutely. And this is just the beginning of Rehoboam's tumultuous reign. His decision sets off a chain of events
Okay.
that dramatically reshapes the landscape of the kingdom,
Okay.
with consequences that will ripple through generations.
So this is where things get really interesting.
Yes, they do.
Stick with us
Yes.
as we dive deeper into the fallout from Rehoboam's fateful decision
Yes.
and explore the lasting lessons we can learn from this pivotal moment in biblical history.
Absolutely.
Welcome back to our deep dive into the reigns of Solomon and Rehoboam.
Okay.
Last time we left off with Rehoboam
Yeah.
making a pretty big mistake
He did.
by rejecting the sage advice of those seasoned advisors.
Yes. He opted to heed the counsel of his younger, less experienced peers.
Yeah.
And that decision led to a dramatic fracturing of the kingdom.
And to add insult to injury,
Yes.
he's soon facing an invasion from Egypt.
Right.
It seemed like everything was unraveling.
It did.
It makes you wonder what could have been going through his mind at that critical juncture.
Well, it's easy to see this as just a simple tale of a bad decision.
Right.
And its immediate consequences.
Okay.
But I think there's a deeper layer here.
Yeah.
Something that speaks to the human condition as a whole.
I'm listening. Unpack that for me.
Think about it, Rehoboam. Inheriting this vast kingdom from a figure like Solomon
Right.
must have felt an immense pressure to prove himself,
Yeah.
to establish his own authority,
Okay.
and perhaps the counsel of his younger peers, urging him to project strength and dominance,
Right.
appealed to his insecurities,
Yeah.
his desire to not appear weak in the eyes of his people.
So it wasn't just arrogance.
I don't think so.
It was maybe a fear of being seen as less than his father.
I think that's a big part of it.
Yeah.
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 And that fear, that insecurity, it can cloud our judgment.
Right.
Leading us to make choices that ultimately harm us and those around us.
Mm.
It's a trap that any of us can fall into.
Yeah.
Not just kings.
But ignoring the wisdom of
Yeah.
those who had successfully navigated those challenges before him.
Right.
I mean, that seems like a pretty basic leadership blunder.
It does, doesn't it? Yeah.
But this is where the story takes an interesting turn.
Okay.
Remember, Rehoboam is not just this one-dimensional villain.
Right.
He's a complex character,
Okay.
capable of both foolish choices and moments of genuine growth.
So there's more to his story than just this initial failure.
There is, yeah.
Tell me there's a glimmer of hope here.
There is. There's a glimmer of hope. After the kingdom splits,
Okay.
with 10 tribes following Jeroboam and forming a separate northern kingdom called Israel,
Yeah.
Rehoboam is left with 2 southern tribes forming the kingdom of Judah.
Okay.
And now facing this new reality, Rehoboam does something quite interesting.
Okay, I'm intrigued. What does he do?
He shifts his focus inward,
Okay.
concentrating on fortifying the cities within Judah,
Okay.
strengthening their defenses, stockpiling provisions.
Yeah.
It's a pragmatic response,
Right.
acknowledging the vulnerability of his now smaller kingdom.
Right. And taking concrete steps to protect his people.
So he's finally realizing that true strength
Yeah,
lies in wisdom and preparation,
I think so.
not in empty boasts.
Right.
Could this be a sign of genuine growth?
Well, it's certainly open to interpretation.
Yep.
Some might argue that this is merely a reaction to fear,
Hmm.
a pragmatic response to a threat.
Yeah.
But I think there's something more profound at play here.
I'm all ears. What's your take on this shift in his leadership?
Well, remember the proverb we discussed earlier?
Yeah.
Where there is no counsel, the people fall.
Right.
But in the multitude of counselors, there is safety.
Right.
Rehoboam experienced firsthand the consequences of ignoring wise counsel.
Yeah.
He saw his kingdom divided, his authority challenged.
Right.
It's not unreasonable to think that this experience humbled him,
Okay.
forcing him to reassess his approach to leadership.
So instead of clinging to the arrogance that led to his downfall, he's starting to understand the importance of strategic planning,
Right.
of listening to the needs of his people,
Yes.
of preparing for potential threats.
Exactly. He's no longer focused on projecting an image of dominance, but on ensuring the well-being of those entrusted to him.
Okay.
And this shift
Yeah.
suggests a maturing of his leadership,
Okay.
a recognition that true power comes from serving others, not lording over them.
It's an interesting contrast to the image of Solomon, right?
Yes.
Building grand structures,
Right.
receiving lavish gifts from foreign dignitaries.
Yeah.
Here we have Rehoboam dealing with a much smaller kingdom, focused on the practicalities of defense and sustenance.
It's a reminder that leadership isn't always glamorous.
Right.
It's often about the nitty-gritty, the day-to-day work
Yeah.
of ensuring stability and security.
And let's not forget the symbolic significance of this shift.
Right.
Rehoboam is fortifying the cities of Judah, the very heartland of his remaining kingdom.
Yes.
I mean, this can be seen as an attempt to rebuild,
Yeah.
not just physically,
Right.
but also spiritually.
Absolutely.
He's creating a place of refuge,
Yes.
a symbol of resilience in the face of adversity.
He's showing that he's learned from his mistakes.
So while he lost a significant portion of his inheritance, he's not giving up on what remains.
No.
He's digging in.
He is.
He's working to create a secure and prosperous future for his people.
Exactly. It's a reminder that even in the midst of setbacks,
Yeah.
we can choose to rebuild,
Yeah.
to learn from our mistakes,
Right.
and to forge a new path forward.
It's what makes Rehoboam's story so compelling, right?
It really does.
He's not just a villain or a hero.
No,
He's a flawed human being
that's right.
wrestling with the complexities of leadership and striving to make sense of his own legacy in the shadow of a legendary father.
Absolutely. It's a story that resonates
Yeah.
with anyone who's ever faced a setback,
Right.
made a mistake,
Yeah.
or felt the pressure to live up to someone else's expectations.
Yeah, there's a universality to Rehoboam's struggle.
I agree.
Even though his circumstances might seem far removed from our own.
Yeah, and it's through exploring these struggles, these
Yeah.
moments of both failure and growth,
Yeah.
that we can glean valuable insights into the nature of leadership, the importance of humility, and the enduring power of resilience.
Yeah, I think so too. But Rehoboam's story doesn't end here.
It doesn't, no.
There are more twists and turns to come.
Yeah, there are.
I'm ready for the next chapter.
Yeah.
What happens next in Rehoboam's reign?
Right.
Does he manage to hold on to what remains of his kingdom?
Well, that's a good question.
Yeah.
Does he achieve any lasting sense of peace and prosperity?
Right.
Well, that's where we'll pick up in the final part of our deep dive. Stay tuned as we explore the long-term consequences of Rehoboam's choices
Right.
and uncover the enduring lessons we can learn from his tumultuous journey.
Welcome back to our deep dive into the reigns of Solomon and Rehoboam.
Okay.
We've been tracing the arc of their leadership,
Right.
from Solomon's legendary wisdom
Yeah.
to Rehoboam's initial missteps
Uh-huh.
and his subsequent efforts to fortify his smaller kingdom.
Right. So kind of picking up where we left off,
Yeah.
Rehoboam does manage to avoid further losses of territory, but his reign, isn't characterized by the same peace and prosperity that we saw under Solomon.
Right.
In fact, the text tells us that he and the people of Judah,
Yeah.
despite experiencing God's mercy,
Right.
after humbling themselves following that Egyptian invasion,
Okay.
they gradually drift away from the path of faithfulness.
It seems like a classic case of out of the frying pan into the fire.
Yeah.
He manages to stabilize the kingdom externally,
Right.
but faces those internal challenges.
Yes.
What leads to this decline?
Well, the narrative highlights a turning away from God, a gradual erosion of the spiritual foundations that had sustained the kingdom under Solomon.
Yeah.
And it's a pattern we see throughout history, isn't it? People turn to God in times of crisis,
Yeah.
but then when things settle down, they forget the lessons learned and kind of revert back to old habits.
It's like that saying, easy come, easy go.
Yes.
But applied to faith.
Exactly.
So how does this spiritual backsliding manifest itself?
Well, we're told that they did evil in the eyes of the Lord.
Right.
A phrase that signifies a departure from God's laws and a descent into idolatry.
Yeah.
They begin to worship other gods, seeking fulfillment in things that can never truly satisfy.
Right.
It's a tragic repetition of the mistakes made by previous generations. A reminder that even after experiencing the consequences of disobedience, human beings have a tendency to stray from that path of righteousness.
It's almost as if the very act of fortifying the cities,
Yes.
of focusing on physical security,
Right.
led to a neglect of their spiritual defenses.
Yeah.
They became so preoccupied
Right.
with protecting themselves from external threats
Yeah.
that they forgot about the internal threats,
Yes.
the temptations
Right.
that
Yeah.
can weaken a nation from within.
That's a profound insight.
Yeah.
The narrative doesn't explicitly state this,
Right.
but it's certainly a plausible interpretation.
Yeah.
It reminds us that true security, both for individuals and nations, comes not just from physical strength,
Right.
but from a deep and abiding connection to a higher purpose.
So what can we learn from Rehoboam's story?
Okay.
It seems like a bit of a mixed bag.
Yeah.
He makes some terrible decisions,
Right.
experiences a measure of redemption, and then ultimately allows the kingdom to decline spiritually.
Yeah.
What's the takeaway for us?
Right.
Living in a world far removed from ancient kings and kingdoms.
Well, I think one of the most important takeaways is the reminder that leadership in any sphere of influence is not a destination,
Okay.
but a journey. It's a constant process of learning,
Yeah.
adapting,
Right.
striving to align our actions with our values. And Rehoboam's story shows us that even those who stumble can course correct,
Right.
but it also highlights the dangers of complacency,
Yeah.
of assuming that past successes guarantee future triumphs.
It's a reminder that
Yeah.
that we need to be vigilant,
Yes.
to constantly check our motivations,
Right.
and to surround ourselves with wise counsel.
Absolutely.
We can't afford to rest on our laurels
Right.
or assume that we've got it all figured out.
Exactly. And just as Rehoboam had those two opposing voices in his ear, we all face competing influences in our lives.
Right.
And it's up to us to discern which voices are leading us towards wisdom
Right.
and which are leading us astray.
Yeah.
Sometimes the voices urging us to be tougher, to assert our dominance are the very voices we need to resist. True strength often lies in humility, compassion, and a willingness to serve others.
It seems that Rehoboam's story, despite its ups and downs, offers a timeless lesson
Yes.
in the complexities of leadership
Right.
and the importance